is blocked northbound from junction 3 to 2 towards Bury at the scene of a multi-vehicle collision. There are still long queues on the Hertfordshire stretch of the M25 heading clockwise after a car broke down just before the A10. Queues back to junction 22, the St Albans London Coney exit. In West London at Shepherd's Bush, the Goldhawk Road remains shut for a police investigation. In East London, the Barking Road, the 124 East Ham is closed for accident investigation work. Long queues on the M27 eastbound in Hampshire from junction 8 to 9 towards Fareham, where a lorry's broken down in the inside lane. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16 along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, a report released today has shown shocking failings of the Prevent scheme in the case of the Islamist terrorist that went on to murder the MP, Sir David Amess. David's daughter joins me in just a moment. Also, the Ukrainian refugee scheme, set up to help Ukrainians, has been used to grant a family from Palestine the right to move to the UK. Many worry that this court ruling will open the floodgates to all of those in conflict zones around the world who happen to have a relative here to come and live in the UK. What are your thoughts on that? And also, speaking about Ukraine, Donald Trump, he reckons that him and Putin have been talking and the end is almost upon us when it comes to that war. What do you think to that? Also, probation, the boss of that service, has said that too many prisoners have been recalled to prison for the wrong reasons. I've got a genuine question for you. Is there anything that works well in this country? If so, do tell me what it is. We've got all of that and lots more, and keeping me company tonight, my panel, Peter Hitchens, a columnist for the Mail on Sunday, and Chris Worrell, the Labour Party activist. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. The top stories. The Prime Minister has told the families of those killed in the Nottingham attacks that a judge-led public inquiry will take place in a matter of weeks. During a meeting at Number 10 today, the families of Barnaby Webber, Grace Amali Kumar and Ian Coates were told by Sir Keir Starmer that a number of different agencies would be scrutinised by the probe. Valdo Calacane killed 19-year-old students Mr Webber and Miss O'Malley Kumar and 65-year-old caretaker Mr Coates before attempting to kill 3 other people in a spate of attacks in the city in June in 2023. Emma Webber said today is a good day.
So it's the first bit of positive news that we've been able to have for a very, very long time. Still processing it.
It'll be in the next few weeks, as we have always said as families, everywhere that Valdecalicane intersected with the authorities, we were let down by those authorities. We've been working so hard towards it, and I just think we couldn't be more delighted. I think for the nation it's a great day, because everyone who's also suffered the way we have, we will make sure that changes come.
In other news, a review into the handling of the man who murdered Sir David Amess under the counter-terror programme PREVENT has found his assessments were problematic. Ali Harbi Ali, who was given a whole life sentence in 2022, had been referred to PREVENT 7 years before he killed the veteran MP in October in 2021, but his case was closed in 2016. The review found handling of his PREVENT case was suboptimal and was closed too quickly. The government promised to publish the Prevent Learning Review after the report into Southport killer Axel Rudakabana's handling by the programme was published last week. Sir Keir Starmer and the leader of the opposition clashed over immigration at Prime Minister's questions today. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch repeatedly asked the Prime Minister why a Gazan family of 6 was allowed to come to the UK under a scheme intended for Ukrainians, and if that loophole would be closed.
There are millions of people all around the world in terrible situations. We cannot help them all, and we certainly cannot bring them all here. Will he commit to bringing forward that new legislation or amending his borders bill?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I've already said the Home Secretary has already got a team working on closing this loophole. We don't need to wait for that. We're getting on with that because we're taking control. They lost control of immigration. We had nearly 1 million people come into this country, had an open borders experiment. On a Monday of this week, they voted against increased powers to deal with those that are running the vile trade of people smuggling. Same old Tories, open borders, empty promises.
Well, the parents and their 4 children fled Gaza after their home was destroyed by an Israeli airstrike. They applied for entry via the Ukraine scheme in an effort to join the father's brother, who is a British citizen and has lived here since 2007. The Home Office says it rigorously contested 2 appeals at tribunal hearings after the family's application to live in the UK was initially refused, but the second appeal was allowed over the rights to a family life enshrined in European Convention on Human Rights. The parents of a baby who died 36 hours after he was born say their son had a voice that's been firmly heard after an NHS trust was fined £1.6 million for a catalogue of failures. The NHS trust admitted it failed to provide safe care and treatment to 3 babies who died within days of their births. The Care Quality Commission had charged Nottingham University Hospitals Trust over the deaths, which all occurred in 2021. The trust pleaded guilty to 6 charges of failing to provide safe care and treatment to the 3 children and their mothers at Nottingham Magistrates Court on Monday. US President Donald Trump has spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin today about ending the war in Ukraine. Mr. Trump said in a post on his social media platform, "We've also agreed to have our respective teams start negotiations immediately." Putin last spoke to a sitting US president in February 2022 when he had a call with Joe Biden shortly before ordering thousands of troops into Ukraine. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also spoken to the US president. That's coming from the Ukrainian president's office. And Heathrow Airport is set to confirm a multi-billion-pound expansion to increase capacity as it prepares to build a 3rd runway. Terminals 2 and 5 will be expanded. The layout of the airfield will be reconfigured in an effort to improve punctuality, with investment to boost bus and coach connections. The development is separate from a new runway and will be privately funded, with airlines and customers facing higher costs for those expanded services. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. It's over to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Tatiana. My name's Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. We're with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, Peter Hitchens, the columnist for the Mail on Sunday. And a new face to this programme, Chris Worrell, the Labour Party activist. We like new faces, so good evening, Chris, to you. You're very welcome tonight. Of course, so are you, Peter. And
well, it's a delight to be here. So.
Good, that's what we like. Thank you. And of course, each and every single one of you at home, very welcome indeed. Join the conversation all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course, tweet or X me. Look, you've just been hearing, though, of course, about that big news. According to President Donald Trump, he and President Putin have now started negotiations, shall we say, when it comes to trying to end the war in Ukraine. So that, of course, big news, and I shall be looking at that in just a few minutes. What are your thoughts on that? Get in touch and tell me. But before I cross to that, I do just want to look closer to home, because a review into the handling of the MP Sir David Amess, his murder, has been released today. We know the story. It's almost quite depressing, quite frankly, to bring you this news yet again, because you know what's about to exit my mouth, ladies and gents, because the same sentence has come out of it often. What am I about to tell you? Well, I'm about to tell you that the Prevent scheme was flawed in the way it dealt with the man that went on to murder Sir David Amess. Apparently, the assessments of him was problematic. His case was essentially closed too early. I'm joined now by his daughter, Sir David's daughter, Katie Amess. Good evening to you, Katie. Thank you for joining us. Now, I've been following some of the things that you've been saying about this, and you're calling, strongly calling and demanding an inquiry. But before I get to that, the report that was released and has been discussed today, I know that you've had access to this quite some time ago. So when you've seen what's been released today, does this tell the full story in the way that you know it?
There are one or two redactions that are problematic, I would say. But because I was made to sign a contract in March 2024, I cannot say what they are, because I'll either go to prison or be fined tens of thousands of pounds. So you have a different version of the report that I have.
But these differences, I know you can't say what they are, and I respect that, but does this alter the picture that we understand? So do you feel that what we're learning today, we, the public, now have the full story? Are the redactions small things or big things?
There's one or two things that would be more damning to the stupidity and the failings in this case. And we would have never even had this report released had it not been for the terrible atrocity in Southport, because this report was never meant to see the light of day, hence me being forced to sign a contract to say that I would not release it. This is a piece of paper. Not one person to do with the perpetrator was interviewed. So I do fear that the government is going to try and use the release of this report to say, no, we did help the Amess family. This doesn't help me. I need an inquiry. I need accountability. I need to know who failed, when they failed, why they failed, and we need to also investigate Essex Police, because they're a massive part of this. There was a threat to my father the night before, albeit unrelated, but they never acted on that threat, and the guy was free to go and kill my father the next day. And they keep saying that it's not their policy to send police protection. I understand that, but when you have a threat to a standing member of parliament, you better believe that you should send police protection. And the guy that did it admitted that he went to other constituency surgeries with his weapon, saw police presence, and turned around. So why on earth was my father not afforded the luxury of police protection? So I welcome the release of this report, but it's scratching the surface. I need a full inquiry and I need answers.
And Katie, I can hear the understandable anger in your voice. I mean, I don't even want to try and imagine what this has all done to your family, because I wouldn't be able to do your grief justice. Let me ask you this. Your dad, by all accounts, was a very good man. He gave decades of his life to service to this country. Do you think he's been, how can I put this nicely, respected in the way that you would have liked him to have been, but by his own colleagues in terms of the way they've treated you, your family, and tried to get you the answers that you want?
It is absolutely disgusting how he and his family have been treated. These people want to stand up in Parliament and say, oh, we're so sorry, he was our friend. You're not somebody's friend if you don't investigate why they were killed. He gave 40 years of his life to this country. To treat him and his memory and his family this way, I don't know how these people can look at themselves in the mirror at night. And he is owed the decency and the respect to investigate what happened. I don't accept all this whitewashing and brushing under the rug and trying to get me to shut up and go away. I'm demanding answers, and I'm not going to stop until I get them.
And I remember, actually, I was live when this appalling attack happened to your dad. I remember that day quite well. But I also then remember, it felt to me anyway, like 5 minutes later almost, the conversation switched in Parliament to, oh, everybody, you got to be nice to each other on social media. Of course, you will have had the details of what actually happened to your dad and who had conducted that. How did it make you feel as a family to hear and see that the focus then became, let's all be nicer to each other on social media?
I mean, it's great to be nice to people on social media, but social media didn't kill my dad. An Islamic terrorist that was under the review of a government body did kill my father. So that deflection tactic doesn't work with me, I'm afraid. And it is angering and it is upsetting that I am still not getting the answers, and I'm still being passed from pillar to post, and nobody wants to help me. But I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to go away, and I'm going to demand this inquiry, and I want answers and I want accountability.
So tell me why then. So you're saying to me your sense and your sentiment is very much that people are not helping you. In fact, actually, they're actively refusing to help you. Why? Why do you think that is?
It's obviously going to be an embarrassment to them. And I asked James Cleverly and Rishi Sunak, you know, we wrote them letters, we tried to meet with them. James Cleverly said, I'm not helping them and I'm not changing my mind. There's obviously something in whatever's going to come out through an inquiry that neither government want to touch with a barge pole. But it is in their interest to investigate, because it could happen to any one of them. Why do they not want to investigate this? We're going to be sitting in this same position time and time again unless somebody is brave enough to throw the whole thing open and find out what went wrong.
And am I right in thinking during the trial, the person that murdered your dad, did he kind of make a suggestion that ultimately it's quite easy, essentially, to play the Prevent programme, tell them what you want to hear, what they want to hear, and you can basically, you know, get out of their grasp? Am I right? Is that my understanding?
Absolutely. He made a mockery and he was laughing, saying, they just took me for a cup of coffee. All you have to do is say that you're not a terrorist and they let you go. If we are going to allow people to be just taken for a cup of coffee, they say what you want to hear and let them go, we're not going to foil any terrorist attacks. And they've tried to shut me up and make me go away. We should have been asking these questions 3.5 years ago when he stood up in a British court and said that. And if we had have done that, the terrible, terrible attacks that have happened since then would possibly not have happened. But me having a conversation with you now, that was never meant to happen. I was meant to have been shut up and put to the side, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask the questions, and I'm going to try and help other people who don't have my platform to ask these questions. What about all the other people that Prevent failed? The government can't pick and choose who they're going to help. They can't say, I'll help you, but I won't help you. Yeah. This is 2025. We live in a democracy. We have a justice system. We pay the politicians bills. They work for us, not the other way round. So I will be getting answers, even if it takes me the rest of my life.
Katie, I never knew your father, but I've got to tell you, it's evident you're a brave, very strong woman, and I'm sure you're doing your dad absolutely proud. I wish you and all of your family all the very best. And, of course, myself and all of the GB News Views and team here, we send our love and our support to you and your family, and I hope that you do get the inquiry and the answers that you so rightly demand. But for now, thank you for your time. It's really distressing, isn't it? I mean, can you imagine being a family like that, and you know, your dad, your husband, your loved one, he has dedicated his adulthood to helping us, the public, the British public. He's put himself forward to be a public servant, and then this happens to him, and as the family, you're sitting there feeling totally and utterly ignored, betrayed. It's absolutely devastating, isn't it? What do you make to it all? Do you have any faith, quite frankly, in Prevent or not? Do you think we can ever resolve the failings that seem so apparent in that system? I do have to say. Essex Police, of course, you've heard there the complaints that Sir David's family have got about them. Essex Police say that they did provide protection on the constituency surgery on the day that he died. They've said that there is basically what's the word for it? A review taking place, and that they can't comment while that investigation is ongoing. Get in touch and let me know your thoughts. I'll bring in my panel on this subject after the break.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And fashionistas are keen to see which new trends are set to hit the catwalk.
Well, our next guest is very well placed to share her predictions with us after being a contestant on hit ITV series Dress the Nation, as well as being an upcycling and sewing consultant.
Wow. Joining us now is Tendai Murewe. I want to go back to you appearing on the ITV Dress the Nation.
Right.
Tell us about that experience. What was that like?
Oh, that was one of my highlights as a upcycling consultant. I learned to sew in my kitchen 5 years ago. And then, you know, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a Dress the Nation, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop.
You
need to come to a workshop.
I need an upcycling consultant. 2025, what can we expect fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. People are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollals and oversized men's jackets.
So the exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. It's still, I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself. You know?
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. Till 7. Peter Hitchens and Chris Worrell remain alongside me. We've opened the show with that news about the Prevent programme. I want to explore this now with you at home and the panel. Worry not as well. I'll also be looking at that news about Donald Trump and Ukraine as well. But this situation with Prevent, I mean, we hear all these lines all the time. Something terrible happens and then we look at it, we get the reviews. It wasn't fit for purpose. There was a problem here and a problem there. Is Prevent actually fit for purpose, do you think, Peter?
Well, I think it's a complete irrelevance to what's actually happening. We repeatedly characterise as terrorist actions the killings actually perpetrated by people who are plainly mentally ill. These happen actually in dozens of cases to people who are not politicians on our streets all the time. They have several reasons, one of them being the very foolish closure of mental hospitals and the creation of the so-called care in the community policy after Enoch Powell decided that he would close those mental hospitals back in the 60s. And another, in my view, the increasing use of the very dangerous drug marijuana, which has been effectively decriminalised by the government and the police, which is the use of which is closely correlated with severe lifelong mental illness and increasingly also with severe irrational violence. If somebody says something political, then or terroristic, then we tend to say they are a terrorist. But I'm not sure that this really stands up. The people who are unhinged often latch on to political or religious movements. There's a particular case that's always interested me of a man called Mohammed Mia, who the perpetrator of a serious stabbing, which you'll probably remember at Leytonstone Underground Station some years ago. Do you remember him?
No.
Well, he was, one of the things that happened was, apart from the fact he stabbed somebody very, very seriously and two other people less seriously, was that at the time he did it, somebody else called out, "You ain't no Muslim, bruv." You might remember that part of the story.
I do remember that.
I thought you remember that. This man, his family had been desperately trying to get him into mental hospital for some time. They realised that he was completely unhinged. They'd been begging the authorities to do something about it. It's harder to get somebody into a mental hospital into this country than it is to get somebody into an Oxford or Cambridge college, and they failed to do so, so he was roaming the streets. He said, as he did his mad actions, that he was doing it for Syria. I don't think he even knew where Syria was. This man actually believed, I'm not making this up, this is what he actually told the authorities in all seriousness. He believed that Tony Blair was his guardian angel. That is how crazy he was. He's now finally in secure mental hospital accommodation, where he should have been before this ever happened. But there is no shortage of people like this roaming around the country. And if we politicise these events and hand over to the ridiculous Prevent organisation the task of dealing with them, we will get nowhere. You'll find also that there are three cases here. The one which we're not discussing, but which also came up today, the Callacane case in Nottingham, the recent Axel Rueda-Cabana case in Southport, and this one. In all cases, the perpetrator, people will say about him, he was perfectly okay until some point during his school years when he changed completely, his personality changed. The place in which people encounter, particularly marijuana in this country, is at school. And that is where their characters change. It happens a lot. We would be much, much more productively engaged if we pursued this side of things, and also if we started to enforce the laws against marijuana, which technically are still very serious, but which are totally a dead letter now.
I've got a lot that I want to say back to you, but Chris, I want to bring you in. Your thoughts?
I mean, I think Mike Tapp summed it up eloquently in the comments today, that the tragic assassination of Sir David Amess was a sort of cut to the heart of democracy. And, you know, when he asked Dan Jarvis about, you know, how do we defend our democracy and what improvements can be made, that there's still a lot more work to be done. But if we look at what the Labour Party has done since July, she was quite right to point out that it was the Southport killing that instigated this when the Labour Party came in. They've had a review done by December. Some of that's the Prevent learnings review into the tragic murder of David Amess fed into that. And some of the changes that have been announced include youth diversion orders, strengthening Prevent frameworks to ensure there's like updated assessment tools, and improving the sort of guidance to sort of better identify and manage them. I think some of the other things that have come in with the enhanced assessment procedures and the extending the sort of monitoring as well as improving data keeping is making sure that beyond Prevent, and I think this ties into the mental health, and I'm not too sure about the marijuana angle, but beyond Prevent, that these things are dealt with adequately. Because at the end of the day, you know, if we've got terrorists roaming our streets, we need to be making sure that our counter-terrorism services are on top of them.
I want to just come back to you on this.
Sure,
I don't dispute, right, that we've got a problem with people using marijuana, in some cases, well, very high-strength stuff, and I don't dispute that it warps people's minds. And I also don't dispute that we have a need for better, stronger mental health facilities, and we've got a lot of people roaming the streets that, quite frankly, they're a danger. They shouldn't be able to.
Dangerous to themselves, apart from anything else.
Yeah,
yes.
But I think it's a little bit... how do I word this nicely?
Don't try. Be unnice if it helps.
To suggest that the likes of Axel Rudikabana,
yes,
he might have done what he did because, you know what, he might have been smoking some dope when he was at school. I think that would be quite offensive to people because
Well, I don't see why it's offensive.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because during that trial, his defence team, they never put forward this kind of defence based on mental health issues. At no point from his defence
It isn't a defence. I'm not... To imagine...
Yeah, but if he was mentally unwell, then that would be presented, wouldn't it?
Imagine for a moment that I'm defending these people or saying they should not be locked up is an absolute absurdity. All of them...
No, I think it's too simplistic to use these cases.
All of them should be locked up for the rest of their lives, as far as I'm concerned. It's nothing to do with what I think should be done to them. It's what I think, if you want to prevent, using that word, these things from happening as often as they do, then it's obviously no use looking at these circumstances in the way that the Prevent organisation and the police and the authorities have been doing, because it keeps happening. And every time somebody says this must never be allowed to happen again, you know as well as I do that it will. And the reason that it will happen is because we constantly mistake what we're dealing with. There's nothing new about this.
There's 3 million
we have a government...
Not 3 million terrorists out there, though, is it, Peter?
Sorry?
There's 3 million marijuana users. I mean, there's not 3 million terrorists out there.
No, there are many smokers who don't get lung cancer as well, and it's not. I've never at any stage said that everybody who smokes marijuana becomes a terrorist. But it is quite striking if you examine, not just in this country, but around the world, in France, in the Bataclan, and the Charlie Hebdo incidents, in Canada and many other places, and across the United States, you will find that the perpetrators of completely irrational killings of this kind are very often long-term users of marijuana who are mentally ill.
I think that the marijuana argument, whilst a valid one, can be quite a red herring in these cases, and I would argue...
On the contrary, I will say this here, I'm here and I'm going to carry on saying it. If this country, and if all the free countries of the world do not soon address this issue of the serious mental illness which follows the use of marijuana, then we are going to have on our hands a very, very major crisis. And the reason why it isn't addressed is because of an immensely powerful lobby of people who want marijuana to be legalised, because, like big tobacco before them, they wish to make money out of human misery. They really hate this being said, and they have many, many friends in the media and in politics.
Colorado?
It's very, very difficult to make this point.
Washington, has there been a rise in terror attacks that are induced by marijuana in Colorado, Washington? I don't think so.
I can't say this because here's another interesting thing. The authorities are totally uninterested in it, so they don't research it.
Well, what is the research? You haven't cited a single bit.
What I'm saying is there is one category of serious crime which is nowadays really deeply examined by the media. You keep interrupting me. I can't answer the question.
You haven't answered the question.
I'm answering it. I'm answering it as I have to, with the caution that I need to use. There is one area, there is one subset of crime nowadays, because there is so much crime in our society, there is one subset of violent crime which is deeply and seriously examined by the media and by the government over and over again. It's so-called terrorist crime. And you will find, if you look, as I do, that the presence of marijuana users at the heart of these crimes is extremely worryingly common. I would love, what I call for above all, to anybody who doubts this, is do the research. Every time anybody commits a violent crime, investigate their past drug use. What's wrong with that?
I would say that one of the massive problems with Prevent, in my humble opinion, is that not enough politicians have got the backbone to be honest about the key challenge that faces this country when it comes to terrorism, which is Islamist ideology. That is a very difficult thing for people to freely discuss. So then we start going around the houses, debating absolutely everything, whether it's social media usage or what.
Yvette Cooper talked about mental health services, so in the independent review in February 23. So
I'm not talking about mental health services. I'm talking about people daren't focus on the key threat that we face in this country, which is Islamist terrorism.
But you're not addressing my point about how crazy people often attach themselves to political or religious causes. They don't understand them. They have the same understanding of these issues as Paddington Bear does. They don't understand it. They don't have... If they had a political purpose, why on earth would they do these dreadful things? What purpose...
No, hang on.
What purpose would it serve?
Evil people.
No, terrorists are successful people. They change the world. Martin McGuinness, a successful terrorist, ended up having dinner at Windsor Castle with the Queen in white tie and tails. Yasser Arafat, a successful terrorist, ended up with more or less diplomatic recognition and the headship of a state. These are terrorists. They have objects, they have targets, they have methods, and they are not people who... What cause would possibly be served by the murder of young children? What cause would be served by the deliberate murder of young children? What cause would be served by the murder of Joe Cox MP? What cause would have been served by the murder of David Amess, God rest his soul? And may I say how much I admire Katie Amess's campaign in honour of her father. What cause would be served? No cause would be served.
Well, I've got some answers to that.
These people are not sane.
Well, I've got some answers to that, actually. I can tell you what causes many people at home might, if they've got those kind of thoughts, but I don't even want to give that any kind of credence on national television. I'll tell you separately in the break what I think. But what do you think on that? Coming up after the break, Trump, he reckons he started the process to fixing the problem in Ukraine when it comes to that horrendous war. Do you have faith in that or not? I'll see you in 2.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Heavy showers and thunderstorms affecting the Adriatic coastline, but elsewhere it should be mostly settled. These heavy showers could produce quite a lot of rain, particularly across southern parts of Croatia, Albania and parts of Greece. Some thunder and lightning mixed in with those too. But as we move our way further west across the Mediterranean, it's largely dominated by high pressure, so largely settled, particularly for Madeira and Tenerife, where we're likely to see the best of the sunshine. Showers continuing for a time before becoming more settled.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hey, evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We'll keep out a lot of cloud tomorrow, and if anything, for many of us feeling a little bit colder, but we should see maybe a few more sunny spells, particularly in parts of the west. We've still got easterly winds with high pressure out east, low pressure out west, and the UK kind of in this no man's land in between. The cloud thick enough for a little bit of drizzle here and there over parts of central and eastern England through the night, but most places staying dry. Clear skies across western Scotland will allow a frost here, and also some frost is likely over northwest England, maybe West Wales, where we do have also some breaks in the cloud. Temperatures elsewhere where it's cloudy, mostly holding up at 2 or 3 Celsius. Still quite breezy on some of these North Sea coasts, but the winds generally a little lighter than they have been through the day today. And as I mentioned, I'm a bit more optimistic for some brighter skies tomorrow. Again, parts of southwest England, West Wales, but even further east, it may brighten up at times. Quite cloudy again for northeast England, eastern Scotland, maybe a few breaks in the cloud for Northern Ireland. Certainly some good breaks in the cloud across western Scotland, so some sunny spells here again, but it does of course mean overnight we'll see that frost forming. So a chilly start as we go through the day. Not a great deal of change, probably not as many light showers as today, but still the odd one here and there over the Midlands, eastern England. The winds will pick up in the southwest as we go through the day, as we'll start to see cloud thickening here. But generally, further east, the wind's a little lighter than today. But if anything, it's going to be colder. Temperatures only 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. We'll have a frost again, where we've got clear skies through Thursday night into Friday morning. Thicker cloud further west. Some drizzly rain at times for West Wales, Devon, Cornwall and Northern Ireland. Many eastern and central parts dry. But again, a better chance of some breaks in the cloud. Still on the chilly side, however, slowly turning a little milder as we head through into the weekend. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Big problems on the M73 tonight if you're heading south. Just east of Glasgow, the exit Slip Road is partly blocked where it meets the M8 at the scene of an accident, causing queues back onto the M8. Into Greater Manchester on the M66, where the 2 inside lanes of 3 are closed northbound from junction 3 to 2 as you head towards Bury. A multi-vehicle collision is being recovered. There are still long queues on the Essex stretch of the M25 clockwise. There was a collision just north of the A127. It's being cleared, but long queues back past Brook Street roundabout as you head round past junction 28. In West London at Shepherd's Bush, the A402 Goldhawk Road is closed for a police investigation. Goldhawk Road Station is also closed on the Circle and Hammersmith and City line, bear in mind. And in East London, the Barking Road at East Ham, that's still closed for accident investigation work. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, welcome to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Alongside me, Peter Hitchens, a columnist for The Mail on Sunday, and Chris Worrell, the Labour Party activist. I've just got to say, we started the programme with Katie Amess, the daughter of Sir David Amess. There is so much love and support that's coming in on the inbox for that family. So many of you sending her your love, your regards, your support, and many of you echoing her calls for that family to get an inquiry. Now, of course, the situation in Ukraine, that has been long discussed. Donald Trump, you might remember, he said he would essentially end that war in Ukraine. I think it was in about a day.
24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours. Well, obviously, he's been in power much longer than 24 hours now. That situation, the war, continues. But now we've got an update because the White House has now confirmed that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin have had talks now about ending this war. Apparently, there's a lot of optimism that it could happen. How it happens and what it looks like is a subject of quite a lot of strong debate at the moment. For example, the suggestion that Ukraine wouldn't be allowed to join NATO. They talk about different boundaries being respected from pre-2014 and so on. Peter, your thoughts?
Well, I think people are realising, I think even Mr. Trump is probably realising that finishing the war in Ukraine in 24 hours was a bit of a boast. The problem is that neither leader, neither Vladimir Putin nor Volodymyr Zelensky, is really able to make peace. If Mr. Zelensky made a peace of the kind that people are talking about now, then I think that he would be overthrown because he would be accused, as he has been accused before in his life, of what the Ukrainian nationalists call capitulation. They're not interested in any kind of frontier deal, and if he made one, then I don't think he'd last. Vladimir Putin is in a similar position. If he were to fail to achieve his aims, which are more limited than people think, but which are quite severely damaging to Ukraine, if he failed to achieve his aims, then there are people in Moscow who would make him look like a liberal Democrat, who would overthrow him. And this is the grave difficulty by bringing about the conflict in Ukraine. Those forces which have done so, and I'm not going to argue here about what they are because it's another time, those forces which have brought about this war have begun something they're going to find very, very hard to finish.
Chris?
Well, look, I think, it's interesting that for the first time that Great Britain will be leading the Ukraine Defence Contact Group. So it indicates a sort of shift in responsibilities from the US towards Europe, and it's sort of increasing Britain's sort of contribution to Ukraine's security. It's interesting to still know that John Healey said we'll stand for as long as it takes alongside Ukraine. There's been no official statement from the UK government on this, but we know that the continued commitment to Ukraine is there. What's interesting is how Russia's economy has been sort of held up by duct tape and denial at the minute, and I think that those will be definitely featuring into those negotiations, and hopefully they can bring an end. The other bit is that we've heard from today, I think on these NATO discussions, is it Rutter, one of the main guys from the NATO, they were saying that if Putin or Russia do go into attack NATO territory, there will be devastating consequences. So we know that the tensions are still high.
This whole conversation about whether or not Ukraine should be allowed to be within NATO, what's your instinct on that, Peter?
Well, it was always a grave mistake when George W. Bush, the master of diplomacy, the man who brought us to the Iraq War, put forward at the Bucharest summit, I think in 2008, the idea that Ukraine and Georgia should join NATO. It was an act of... It followed a speech, I think it was the previous year at Munich, by Vladimir Putin saying, what on earth is all this eastward expansion of NATO for? Who is its target? And the response of George W. Bush was just to do more of it. I think there's been some grave irresponsibility in Western foreign policy since the age of Clinton. when the idea was decided on by a faction in American foreign policy, it's not by any means universally held, that this was a wise course of action. I think at the time, George Kennan, probably the most brilliant diplomat of the 20th century, the man who masterminded the Cold War and the defeat of the Soviet Union, came out of retirement to say this policy of eastward expansion of NATO was a grave danger and would lead to a new Cold War. Clinton, of course, went ahead because he wasn't interested in the advice of intelligent or knowledgeable people, but then or most other times. And so we have got what we have got. As I say, once you start a conflict of this kind, it's immensely hard to bring it to an end because you mobilize public opinion. And there is some public opinion in Russia, particularly very strongly nationalist, and there's also very strong public opinion in the West, which is now mobilized in favor of this war. How you climb down from it once you've done that, as Winston Churchill said 100 years ago, the wars of democracies will be much, much harder to finish than the wars of kings, because you have to sustain such wars by gaining strong popular support from them. And having done that, it's immensely difficult to do the climb down necessary for a compromised peace. I don't have, at the moment, very much optimism. In the middle of this, Ukraine is in hell. Ukraine is under constant bombardment. Its power system is wrecked. Its young men are being sent into the meat grinder of war. Many of its best people have left. And what good have we done Ukraine? Well, it's search me, but that's my view of NATO expansion.
Well, one of the first things that Keir Starmer did is he, if my memory serves me well, signed a 100-year deal, like a partnership, 100-year partnership with Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of sets the commitment to defence in Europe. At the end of the day, the Russian invasion in Ukraine has been nothing but short of barbaric. You know, the economy's on its knees. We're seeing the changes in Syria, particularly, where I think the Russian involvement there was sort of holding up new energy supply lines into Europe via Turkey. So I think the shift in power dynamic now away from Russia will sort of lead into whether there might be, hopefully, an agreement. To what extent, what those land borders look like, you know, obviously Trump has discussed where Kyiv's interests might be compromised on that. I think the realistic thing is that Russia needs just to get out of there because, you know, the genocide and the war crimes that they've done in that country is just totally unbelievable.
Well, what will the future hold in this? It's a horrendous situation, isn't it, in Ukraine? Do you have faith then that Donald Trump is the man to sort it out? When he issued his statement today, he also went on to say that if he was in power, he believes that that war would never even have started in the first place. But speaking of that war, of course, it led to lots of Ukrainian refugees coming here to the UK to live. Well, that scheme, the Ukrainian family scheme, has now been used to grant a Palestinian family the right to come and live in the UK. Some people are saying that that court judgment will, their words, open the floodgates to essentially anyone that's got a relative here from any conflict zone across the world to come and move here. What do you think to that? We'll discuss in 2.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Jonathan, in London, we're hearing that there could be more posties from an Amazon point of view in order to limit or cut carbon emissions, but that they could put more people on foot delivering their parcels.
This is really interesting because more and more people now obviously are using Amazon and buying their shopping online or buying gifts online. And it's interesting that in London they're talking about putting their Amazon workers on foot. There are now parts of the country, I think Milton Keynes is one part of the country, where there's robots delivering parcels, or
really?
You'll see these, well, they call them robots. You'll see these little things sort of bundling down the street.
Yes.
Sort of
robots.
Yeah, I mean, technically they are a robot, but when I think of a robot, I think of a sort of
a humanoid robot.
Yeah, sort of humanoid thing, sort of Lost in Space style robot. But actually, they're sort of you know, little sort of carriages, little
droids,
boxes.
like Star Wars droid type.
Well, they're not
thing.
even that. They're like a little sort of, they're like a box on wheels, delivering parcels in places like Milton Keynes and other bits of the country. So I think this is just another example of how the world is changing. Online shopping is completely changing the way in which we all live our lives, the way in things. The way
But I think
things are
Milton
delivered.
Keynes lends itself to something like that. This is a newly designed town. And
Exactly, that's why they're in Milton Keynes.
And I really do think that a town like that really does lend itself towards a piece of tech like that. You know, when I think back, our postie in Gloucestershire is a guy called Dave. He's fantastic. Everyone knows who he is. But I'm not sure that he could be replaced by one of these little droid things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying. That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, everybody. Michelle Dewberry, Peter Hitchens, Chris Worrell alongside you till 7 now. The floodgates could open. That is a suggestion after a court ruling. If you all remember, we've just been talking there about the Ukrainian war. Well, of course, we had that scheme, didn't we, to rehouse people from Ukraine here into this country. I mean, it does what it says on the tin. It is called literally a Ukrainian scheme, so one would assume, applying common sense, that it literally applies exclusively to Ukrainians, but no. Because now a Palestinian family have actually been granted the right to settle here in the UK under that scheme. Originally, they were turned down. Long story short, it was appealed, and the judge essentially said that the family have the right to come here on the basis of having a right to a family life under the ECHR, because apparently they had a brother that lived in this country. Where are you on this one, Chris?
I'd say, you know, I mean, what we've seen today is the sort of, you know, the right trying to sort of milk this like it's the last dairy farm in Britain. The bottom line is that even under the Ukrainian settlement scheme, as of February 2025, you cannot even get indefinite leave to remain. So even under this scheme, there is no indefinite leave to remain. We've seen that Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer today in the Commons talking about closing that loophole and opposing the decision that was made by the courts. And we've seen sort of Kemi Bottlejob kind of try and wriggle around on the PMQs today, sort of trying to defend this sort of half-baked, headline-hungry hatchet job of a policy. And what we have seen is the Tories and Reform opposing the immigration bill, the Border Security and Immigration Bill, where there's citizenship restrictions for illegal immigrants and people coming from, you know, non-normal routes, enhanced enforcement, as well as sort of other detention requirements. So we've seen sort of Labour, in my opinion, taking the right steps to ensure that these sort of flail policies of the Tories, you know, 14 years of neglect, you know, being misused.
I mean, we haven't really got time to get into all of this, but many people will say about the reason that they're voting against this Borders bill is they would argue it's not fit for purpose, and it actually makes it a lot easier in some cases for people to be able to arrive here that shouldn't be doing that. Well, they would dispute that, hence they're voting against it. But I found it interesting that you say basically this is essentially a hobby horse of the right to be concerned about this. I don't think it's an issue that can be simplified as right or left. It is a basic, simple numbers game. When you've got an island with finite resources and you've got, very unfortunately, conflict zones in various places across the world, you don't need to be a mathematician to calculate. If you then start saying that anyone that's got a relative in this country essentially can take the precedent that may be set, and therefore you can all apply and potentially be granted the right to come here, that's problematic.
The Brexit deal didn't have a returns agreement, right? And this deterrent was, you know...
What's Brexit got to do with the scheme?
Because it had no returns agreement. We're talking, to your point that you just made there, what we're looking at now is, and why they opposed the bill. At the end of the day, the Labour Party has put in place a means...
No, I'm not talking about the bill. I'm talking about, you said that the people on the right, and I think you said something like they're milking it like it's the biggest dairy farm in town. It's not a right...
Yeah, the Tories and Reform are, yeah.
It's a basic, simple
Talking about the
matter
deterrent.
of when you've got a country with finite resources,
Yeah, no one's
it's not
disagreeing with
possible
that.
to become the Wales refugee
No one's
camp, is
disagreeing
it?
with that. They're disagreeing with the fact that tourism reform opposed the Border and Security Bill, which put in citizen restrictions, which were even firmer than the previous one. So you can't come on a boat and get indefinite leave to remain.
Yes,
It's not
but
there.
what's
That's a
that got
deterrent.
to do with the price of fish? We're not
Well, it's
talking
about a
about
deterrent.
that.
Could I
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the court judgment.
Could I have a go? None of these things have anything to do with the point. The point is here, why are judges attempting to make immigration law?
Yes.
It's not their business.
They're going to close
we
the
have
loophole.
we have in this country a parliament which is supreme over all other arms of government, and which should be taking decisions. If this country's parliament wants to decide to let large numbers of refugees in from Gaza, then it can face election and have that policy tested. What is wrong is for judges sitting in courts to make a policy of this magnitude. The reason why this happens is precisely because your Labour Party spent a large part of its time in office between 1997 and 2010, making lawyers more powerful, particularly with the Human Rights Convention being incorporated into British law, which gives judges immense breadth of interpretation. They can say it means practically anything, and they do, as we know, right down to chicken nuggets. The other thing is this: they created a Supreme Court in a country where Parliament is supreme, which they should not have done. They introduced the Judicial Appointments Commission, which totally radicalised the legal system and made it far, far less conservative. This is almost a putsch against Parliament, which Labour took part in, and we see the fruits of it day after day. I didn't interrupt you. Day after day, after day after day, the judges and courts at the high and low levels constantly interfering with the power and right of Parliament to govern this country, and they are unaccountable. And the whole reason why Parliament is important in our society is that it is, for all its many faults, and I'm the first to acknowledge them, it is accountable and must be elected, and its members can be removed if they're not satisfactory. That is not the case with judges, and we should not be allowing our country to be governed by judges.
There you go. What do you think to that issue? Do you have that concern or not? Jeremy Corbyn, he's tweeted out and said the government was right to welcome Ukrainian refugees fleeing war. He says there's only one reason that people in Gaza displaced by a genocide that our government are better treated differently. And he says that reason is anti-Palestinian racism. So there you go, different opinions. I've got about 30 seconds left. Lucy Letby, you're very passionate about this.
Well, I am, and there's been some extraordinary news in the past week. In fact, it's just over a week now since the incredible Shuley press conference in London, in which some of the most eminent doctors in the subject actually concluded that there had been no crimes committed in the Countess of Chester Hospital, and that if that hospital is so badly run that if it were in Canada, where Shuley comes from, it would have been closed down. I think this is an actual turning point, and many people who've previously hesitated are now beginning to understand that we face a major miscarriage of justice danger should be put right.
Well, and I know you have very strong opinions on the Lucy Letby situation, so I definitely want to explore that again in a bit more detail, but for time reasons, I shall have to leave that there for now. I shall end the programme the way that I started the programme. Absolutely overwhelming amount of you getting in touch, wishing Katie Amess well, furious with the way that family has been treated by those in power. Look, that's all I've got time for. Thanks, gents. Thanks to you at home. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We'll keep a lot of cloud tomorrow, and if anything, for many of us feeling a little bit colder, but we should see maybe a few more sunny spells, particularly in parts of the west. We've still got easterly winds with high pressure out east, low pressure out west, and the UK kind of in this no man's land in between. The cloud thick enough for a little bit of drizzle here and there over parts of central and eastern England through the night. Most places staying dry. Clear skies across western Scotland will allow a frost here, and also some frost is likely over northwest England, maybe West Wales. where we do have also some breaks in the cloud. Temperatures elsewhere where it's cloudy, mostly holding up at 2 or 3 Celsius. Still quite breezy on some of these North Sea coasts, but the winds generally a little lighter than they have been through the day today. And as I mentioned, I'm a bit more optimistic for some brighter skies tomorrow. Again, parts of southwest England, West Wales, but even further east, it may brighten up at times. Quite cloudy again for northeast England, eastern Scotland, maybe a few breaks in the cloud for Northern Ireland. Certainly some good breaks in the cloud across western Scotland, so some sunny spells here again, but it does of course mean overnight we'll see that frost forming. So a chilly start as we go through the day. Not a great deal of change, probably not as many light showers as today, but still the odd one here and there over the Midlands, eastern England. The winds will pick up in the southwest as we go through the day, as we'll start to see cloud thickening here. But generally, further east, the wind's a little lighter than today. But if anything, it's going to be colder. Temperatures only 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. We'll have a frost again, where we've got clear skies through Thursday night into Friday morning. Thicker cloud further west. Some drizzly rain at times for West Wales, Devon, Cornwall and Northern Ireland. Many eastern and central parts dry. But again, a better chance of some breaks in the cloud. Still on the chilly side, however, slowly turning a little milder as we head through into the weekend. Bye for now.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. There are big problems up in Aberdeenshire tonight to the northeast of Brecon. The